You're about to watch what we call an extended clip of the Young Turks, and the reality is it's somewhere in the middle. It's a little longer than our YouTube clips, but it's actually shorter than the whole 2-hour show, which you can get if you're a member. You can get it ad-free, and make sure you catch every news story we do that day. You're gonna love it as a full show. That's at tytnetwork.com/join. Thanks for watching. Welcome to the Young Turks. Once again, great to have Dan Rather as part of the network, and obviously his show was just on, and he was covering the State of the Union. We will be covering the State of the Union live tomorrow. We will have 3 different speeches and then analysis for you guys. Donald Trump's, of course, State of the Union, which is a depressing sentence. And then Bernie Sanders has a response to Donald Trump, and then there is a separate Democratic response as well. You would figure the Democrats would want to have their most popular politician do the response to the president, but apparently not. But we will cover all 3, and we will do play-by-play, especially during Trump's speech. When the annoying applauses come, we will break down what he is saying and what in fact is reality. That'll of course be at tytnetwork.com/live. The regular show, as obviously you see here, starts at 6 o'clock Eastern, and then that coverage will start at 9 o'clock Eastern. And so I also want to thank the members for allowing that extra coverage, and the Dan Rather Show and all the other things that we do, tytnetwork.com/join. And then finally, one quick note here before I tell you what's on the show. We told you guys we're doing a Sweet 16 birthday party for the Young Turks. That's February 15th here in LA. It's going to be in a theater in downtown. And it turns out that the VIP tickets already sold out, so we extended it. We said there would be 50. We're now extending it to 100, and 68 have already been bought. These are the guys that make the show possible because they're chipping in $100. We're doing a meet and greet with them, with the hosts, including myself, before the show starts, and then we're going to do the show. General admission is not sold out yet, but that is also now had a lot of sales, and so at some point that'll likely also get sold out. This is all at tytnetwork.com/party. And general admission is just $10. That's just to make sure you guys are coming. Just trying to cover costs on that. Part of the reason is we want to celebrate with you guys in terms of the milestone. We're going to have a lot of our guests. A lot of our hosts, of course, on stage there. Jimmy's going to do a set, and then we will actually have some political speeches too. It's a party/rally. Allison Hartson will speak, and of course I'll speak at that. So tytnetwork.com/party to check that out. Okay, now a little bit later in this program, I said that Donald Trump would ultimately be on the side of TPP. Is that true? Well, we'll find out. He went to Davos. I've got some news on that. And then TYT investigates with a great report on Donald Trump's likely IRS nominee. So if history is any guide, he will appoint someone to destroy the IRS. And lo and behold, wait till you get a load of this guy. All right, now that's all later in the program. Let's go over here and get started. Okay. Andrew McCabe is out. So he was the acting director at the FBI for a little while, and now he was the deputy director. So after Comey was fired, he stepped in as acting director. After they got a regular director appointed by Trump, he then became deputy director. But Trump has been conducting a war on McCabe quite publicly. Some of the really interesting turns we find out about today, I'll share that with you in a second. But as NBC News reported first explains, last week White House spokesman Raj Shah fanned reports of pressure from the White House to fire McCabe by saying in a statement that Trump believes politically motivated senior leaders of the FBI have tainted the agency's reputation for unbiased pursuit of justice. Now that's fairly hilarious because obviously the main bias coming from Donald Trump himself, who apparently does not like being investigated and would like to block that investigation. So nonetheless, there was a world of pressure on McCabe to leave, and today they are reporting that he's quote unquote stepping aside. That is how it's being framed. One of the questions at hand was whether he was going to wait till March so that he could get his, the retirement numbers that he apparently needed and to fulfill a certain period of time at the FBI. It looks like they struck a compromise. He was leaving a little earlier, but McCabe will remain on the FBI payroll until he is eligible to retire with full benefits in mid-March, the sources said. Apparently he's using some of his sick days and vacation days to get to that point in time. In other words, don't worry, Donald. We made sure we pushed him out early. Donald Trump had sent a tweet saying, oh, we're running out the clock with 90 days left. In other words, get rid of him, get rid of him, get rid of him. Apparently, in an earlier report, we found out that Trump had asked McCabe who he voted for when he was first talking to him after he had fired Comey. McCabe apparently told him he didn't vote. That's obviously an improper question, given that the Justice Department is supposed to be independent of the White House. But A, Donald Trump has never understood that. B, if he does understand it now, he hates that concept. He's like, why would they investigate me? It's my government. I don't want them investigating me. They might find out the things I've done. Well, that's why the Justice Department is independent. So earlier this month, the Washington Post reported after Trump fired FBI Director James Comey, he met with McCabe in the Oval Office and asked him who he had voted for in the 2016 election. That's the improper question, to say the least. And then here's a little bit more context from NBC about McCabe's career. A longtime career servant, McCabe had served at the FBI since 1996 under former directors Robert Mueller and Comey. And that was one of the issues that Donald Trump had with him. He thought, well, this guy is loyal to Comey and Mueller, which makes sense because Comey was the head of the FBI and McCabe worked for him. And Mueller earlier was the head of the FBI and McCabe worked for him. Well, Trump thinks, no, you shouldn't be loyal to the people investigating me. You should be loyal to me. And that's part of the reason why he likely asked the question of who he voted for. And he was also upset that McCabe's wife earlier in 2015 had taken donations when she was running for office from Terry McAuliffe, an ally of Hillary Clinton. Now, what that has to do with what he did in 2016 and 2017, no one's quite sure, but Trump thinks, good enough for a smear job. Anyone investigating me, I'm going to find some dirt on them, and I'm going to pretend they're biased instead of the obvious fact, as I alluded to earlier, which is that he's biased. He's the one being investigated. That's why he's trying to fire anyone doing that. Now, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is asked about that today. She has a comical answer of, McCabe? What name so? Andrew McCabe, us having to do with him stepping aside early. Here, let's watch.
The news came down in the last hour that the Deputy Director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe, is stepping down. So we get reaction from the White House, and as the president back at the end of December was tweeting about Andrew McCabe in a less than effusive praise manner. What's he thinking about him stepping down?
Look, we've seen the numerous reports, as all of you have, and any specifics, I can tell you none of this decision was made by that of the White House, and any specifics, I would refer you to the FBI. Look, the president stands by his previous comments, but in terms of the situation today, as I just said, we've seen the reports just as all of you have. We don't have any specific comments.
Can you say definitively then that the president did not play a role in Andrew McCabe stepping down?
Yes, I didn't say the president wasn't part of this decision-making process.
No one at the White House contacted the FBI about McCabe. No one put any directives or even had any discussions about his tenure at the FBI. Did anyone at the White House?
Not that I'm aware of it. Nothing specific to McCabe and his stepping down as of today.
No one at the White House gave any instructions or even communicated to the FBI about the White House's view on Andrew McCabe. Really? All right, well, let's go to some news reports and then a tweet from Donald Trump. Back to NBC. In recent weeks, the White House has agitated for McCabe's exit, saying he's part of a broader pattern of bias against the president in the highest levels of federal law enforcement. Seems like they had some sort of discussion. More, Trump's repeated criticism of McCabe, which is very public, both in public and private, made the FBI's deputy director the leading example of concerns Republicans have increasingly raised about potential impartiality at the Justice Department. Well, they've been all over television talking about that. And then there's, of course, this, Trump's tweet. He said, how can FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, the man in charge, along with leaking James Comey of the phony Hillary Clinton investigation, including her 33,000 illegally deleted emails, be given $700,000 for his wife's campaign by Clinton puppets during investigation. Now, the reality is, of course, that money was given to McCabe's wife. That's the kind of insider stuff that I can't stand. And so she runs. All the people in Washington know her through the cocktail circuit. They pour money into that. And so pointing that out as something that is an annoying part of Washington is fair enough. Saying that that decision to get the money had something to do with an investigation that started years later, well, that makes no sense at all. But the one thing that is clear is Donald Trump publicly criticizing McCabe and of course, the campaign overall to get rid of him. Now, here comes the latest twist, which is quite remarkable, but now knowing Donald Trump, perhaps not surprising. So when James Comey was fired, apparently Donald Trump was enraged that he then got on a government plane back to LA because he found out while watching TV in Los Angeles, he was about to give a speech about the FBI here in LA. And then he's fired, so he gets back on the plane that brought him and comes home. But Trump thinks this is outrageous, calls McCabe, who's now in charge of the FBI because Comey's just been fired, and says, why did you let him get on an FBI plane? McCabe says, well, I didn't know anything about that. But if I had known, I would have let him get back on the plane because that's the plane he came in on. And Trump is then furious, and then this happens. The president was silent for a moment and then turned on McCabe, suggesting he ask his wife how it feels to be a loser. An apparent reference to a failed campaign for state office in Virginia that McCabe's wife made in 2015. McCabe replied, okay, sir. Trump then hung up the phone. We've got a lunatic in office. Who says that to anyone who, by the way, would be part of your government? But the second part of it is someone who you think, right or wrong, is in your delusional mind set against you. Then why would you say that to him? Because he has no sense at all. Because he can't help himself. He has verbal diarrhea. He just says whatever comes to the top of his mind. Oh yeah, your wife's a loser. What kind of a person says that? Could you imagine if Obama had said that to the acting director of the FBI? Oh yeah, your wife's a loser. Oh my God, imagine what Fox News would have done to him. But now Fox News is in the business of shredding the FBI, shredding the rule of law. Law and order, we never meant that. No, we meant that the FBI, if it's doing our bidding, is fine. But if they're actually investigating serious allegations against a Republican, no, fire everyone in the building. Well, now McCabe is gone. There are reports that Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General of the Justice Department, might be next, and the purge continues. So if you let these guys purge all of the people they perceive to be their opponents, whether it's political opponents or in this case, in their perception, legal opponents, people who might investigate them, well, then we no longer have a democracy. And today, with McCabe, quote unquote, stepping aside, as the White House comically says that they had nothing to do with it, part of that purge continues. These are dark times in America. If they get to Rosenstein and Mueller, there has to be immediate impeachment proceedings. But with the Republicans now ordered by their donors, who are incredibly happy about the trillions of dollars they got in tax cuts, told to back Donald Trump, that doesn't seem likely. At this point, I don't know who else he could push out or fire and still have the Republicans back him. But given how ecstatic the donors are about the trillions of dollars they just took from us, I'm not sure there's a good answer to that. He might be able to fire anyone and still have the Republicans back him. In which case, if we're going to have any rule of law at all, and we're going to have a democracy, well, then you're going to have to make that decision in 2018 based on your vote for Congress. We'll see. There's still a lot more dominoes here. But another domino fell today, and it is not good news. Okay. Now, let's go to Speaking of Rosenstein, let's go to that story. For a while now, conservatives, right-wingers on social media have been doing hashtag release the memo. At first when I saw it, I thought, well, wow, is this a classified memo they have from the FBI or any kind of information they have from intelligence officials about what Donald Trump did or did not do? They want it released, so I imagine it's good news for Trump. So I was curious about it. Well, turns out no. It does have some classified information according to the FBI, but it doesn't come from the FBI. It's a memo written by Republicans. And they want it released because they think that that proves that they are right because other Republicans wrote a memo saying they don't like the Justice Department investigating Donald Trump. That does not appear to be persuasive evidence, but let's dive into the details, find out more. We'll go to the New York Times here. They explain a secret, highly contentious Republican memo reveals that Deputy Attorney General Rod J. Rosenstein approved an application to extend surveillance of a former Trump campaign associate shortly after taking office last spring, according to 3 people familiar with it. I suppose this is the aha moment for right-wingers. They're like, aha! So he investigated someone connected to Donald Trump. Yes, he apparently extended that investigation. And you see, for that to be interesting, you then have to follow it up with, and he shouldn't have because it was wrong, because that guy didn't do it, and here's the rest of the information. But they don't have that. They're just like, aha, he asked for an investigation. That's kind of his job as Deputy Attorney General. This is your big aha. These guys are unreal. All right, more details. The renewal shows that the Justice Department, under President Trump, saw reason to believe that the associate, Carter Page, was acting as a Russian agent. But the reference to Mr. Rosenstein's actions in the memo, a much disputed document that paints the investigation into Russian election meddling as tainted from the start, indicates that Republicans may be moving to seize on his role as they seek to undermine the inquiry. So there is already a warrant to investigate Carter Page, who is part of the Trump campaign, because they're concerned he might be a Russian agent. They have good enough evidence that they got a warrant from a court, and they didn't do it without a warrant, which unfortunately happens all the time in America. They got a warrant, they did an investigation as they should. Rosenstein gets into office, even though he's appointed as part of the Trump government, says, well, they do have evidence that this guy's a Russian agent, and they already had a warrant. I'm going to continue that warrant to make sure that he is or is not a Russian agent, and we know because that's my job at the Justice Department. Republicans seize on that and go, aha! Again, aha what? Aha what? Do you have evidence that Carter Page is not a Russian agent? Nope, they don't have that evidence. Well, do you have evidence that this memo was written by the FBI about secret plots? Nope. Well, who wrote the memo? The Republicans wrote the memo. So what? So what? So some of your own guys wrote a memo saying they don't like Rod Rosenstein because he's doing his job. Wow, hashtag release the memo. Preposterous. Now, the reason the FBI claims they're concerned is because they think in doing so, they might reveal classified information and they won't show the FBI what's in the memo. The FBI is saying, well, look, if there's no classified information, then that's not an issue. Can we see it? They're like, oh, no way. We're not going to show it to you. I mean, now the Republicans refuse to work with their own Justice Department. All of this is madness. Okay, so more from the New York Times. No information has publicly emerged that the Justice Department or the FBI did anything improper while seeking the surveillance warrant involving Mr. Page. That has not emerged because it does not exist. But right-wingers go, well, if you got a warrant on a Trump campaign official, by definition, it must have been wrong. Based on what evidence? Based on the fact that you're in love with Donald Trump. Okay, but that's not evidence. Okay, Mr. Trump is now again telling associates that he is frustrated with Mr. Rosenstein, according to one official familiar with the conversations. In other words, here we go. Just got rid of McCabe, earlier got rid of Comey. Now let's go get Rosenstein, who appointed Mueller, so then we can take out Mueller. Why? Because Trump knows that if you have a real investigation of him, you will find out all of his connections to the Russians. Now, some Trump followers and other knuckleheads in the country might not be convinced. because they think, oh no, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? I can give you a laundry list of evidence, and I have done so throughout this last year, 12, 24, 36 pieces of public evidence that is exceedingly clear. Now, that doesn't mean you have a smoking gun. That doesn't mean you can convict him. That doesn't mean you can impeach him. That's why they're having an investigation, okay? But no, people say, no, the fact that he's trying to fire everyone during the investigation, that doesn't mean anything. Really? Okay, if you're a Republican and Obama's being investigated and he fires the FBI director investigating him, now he moves aside the deputy director that has supported him, now talking about firing the deputy attorney general and has agitated publicly to fire the special counsel investigating him. If Obama had done all of that or Clinton had done all of that, what do you think your reaction would be? Oh my God, we knew it. We knew it. He's the most corrupt guy there is in the world. Impeachment, impeachment, impeachment. Come on, it's super obvious. It's frustrating having these nonsense debates with people who are not honest actors. Okay, now we go to another part of this, which is another person involved with the Justice Department. They explained, but Stephen E. Boyd, an assistant attorney general, warned in a letter last week to the committee's chairman, Representative Devin Nunes of California, that it would be extraordinarily reckless to release a memo drawing on classified information without official review, and pleaded with the committee to consult the Justice Department. So that's an assistant attorney general doing his job, saying, hey, look, at least show us the memo, and if there's no classified information, have at it, Hoss. But we don't know if you're releasing classified information. Oh, I don't want to work with the Justice Department. You guys like to investigate us because maybe our leader did something terribly illegal. Money laundering. Anyway, according to Bloomberg, when Trump found out about Boyd saying that it would be reckless, he, quote, erupted in anger. Of course he did. He had somebody else blocking his attempts to block justice. So, again, explaining here the Justice Department's point of view, he said the department was unaware of any wrongdoing related to the FISA process, Boyd did. Now, one more piece of information here. The White House has made it clear to the Justice Department in recent days that it wants the Republican memo to be made public. In other words, we don't care if there's classified info in it. We erupt in anger if the FBI or the Justice Department suggests that it might. We just want you to release it so that we could use it to smear everyone else at the Justice Department. The guy's so obviously guilty. You're unbelievable if you think he's not guilty. No. Innocent people fire every investigator that investigates them all the time. It's a common occurrence. Now, this whole thing about, Carter Page and the surveillance, did Rosenstein dream this up even though he's part of the Trump government? Well, we've got Asha Rangappa, who's a former FBI special agent, explaining how that can't possibly be true. Watch.
This is exactly an example of how this memo is inaccurate and misleading. So, Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein actually doesn't have the authority to extend any kind of surveillance at all. The Department of Justice has to go into a FISA court and request an extension of any surveillance that's ongoing. Now, the Deputy Attorney General might sign off on allowing their attorneys to go into court to ask for it, but the ultimate decision on that would be made by a judge. And here's an important point, John. When there's surveillance on a U.S. person, the Department of Justice has to go in every 90 days and show the court that they are getting valuable foreign intelligence information in order for that surveillance to be extended. Now, the Carter Page surveillance began in September. Rosenstein came on board in March. That means that this FISA had already been extended before Rosenstein even came on the picture, and at that a judge found that this surveillance was actually collecting valuable foreign intelligence information. So it was a valid FISA. There was a reason to have it in place. So this is the kind of thing where these details need to be explained. Otherwise, they completely misconstrue what was happening.
And they misconstrue it on purpose, obviously, because they're politically biased and hacks, the Republicans defending Donald Trump. So just so you're absolutely clear, They go to a FISA court and get a warrant, what you're actually supposed to do. Then in September is when they receive it. At some point it is renewed. So the court says, wow, you actually do have information on this guy. Keep investigating him because we think he might be a Russian agent. Then Rosenstein comes in March. They got the original one in September. It got renewed at one point. Then Rosenstein comes in at March as part of the Trump administration. And he says, well, all right, I guess you have good info on this. So I'm going to ask to extend the warrant again. And the court says you continue to have good enough information that Carter Page might be a Russian agent. So continue to investigate him. So that's the big crime of Rosenstein, according to the Republicans. Oh my God, he did his job and extended a warrant on a guy that the court thinks might be a Russian agent tied to our government. But they don't want him to do his job. They want to fire anyone who will do their job because they don't believe in the rule of law. All they care about is protecting their own teammate, Donald Trump, and they're willing to do anything and pretty much set our democracy on fire to accomplish their mission. Okay. Now we turn to a lighter topic. About what an idiot Donald Trump is. Now that's fairly normal, but it goes towards proving an important point about facts. All right, so let's do it. Donald Trump went to Davos, and then on that trip, he talked to Piers Morgan. He said a lot of interesting things on British television. First of all, he repeated his claim that, quote, I'm a stable genius. Well, at least he took very out this time. In a tweet, he had said that he was a very stable genius and that he was like a smart person. That was the third time he said he was like a smart person, except that time he wrote it down. Well, then he had other parts of the interview that makes us question whether that might actually be true. Well, let's find out what he thinks about climate change.
Do you believe in climate change? Do you think it exists?
There is a cooling and there's a heating. I mean, look, it used to not be climate change. It used to be global warming, right? That wasn't working too well because it was getting too cold all over the place. The ice caps were going to melt. They were going to be gone by now, but now they're setting records, okay? They're at a record level. You know, I'm like a smart person.
The ice caps are at a record level. In fact, let me give you that quote. The ice caps were going to melt. They were going to be gone by now. Who said that? No one said that. But now they're setting records. They're at a record level. Record for what? First of all, everything has to be emphatic with Trump. These are big, beautiful, soft towels, referring to paper towels that were wrapped in plastic. The ice caps, they're setting records. Records for what? Well, it turns out, though, I got to give them credit. They are setting records, just not in the way that he anticipated. Now, according to HuffPost, and more importantly, they're reporting on what NASA said, the polar ice caps are breaking records for melting. And last year, NASA reported that sea ice in both the Arctic and the Antarctic was at a record low, again, due to melting. The reason why you guys voted in a Young Turks poll that Donald Trump is actually dumber than George W. Bush is because you got a sense from Bush that he realized he wasn't that bright. Trump has no idea. The ice caps are at a record. It's a record for melting. Okay, whatever, it's still a record. It's a big, beautiful record. Oh. All right, ice on the ocean and on land are both disappearing rapidly, according to Rutgers University climate scientist Jennifer Fran, and we know why. Increasing greenhouse gases from burning fossil fuels that trap more heat and melt the ice. But that is a scientist, so Trump, of course, will think that it's not real, whereas Republican propaganda paid for by the fossil fuel industry in his mind is the real news. Donald Trump says there's a cooling and there's a heating, as you just saw. I mean, look, it used to be not climate change, it used to be global warming, right? That wasn't working too well because it was getting too cold all over the place. All right, well, let's investigate whether it is in fact getting too cold all over the place. Climate change, according to NASA, refers to a broad range of global phenomenon created predominantly by burning fossil fuels. The increasing average temperature of the Earth, that is global warming, is one key result. Others are rising sea levels and a growing trend toward extreme weather and weather anomalies linked to that. So, in other words, did the scientists then say, we were wrong about global warming, we retract that? No, that never happened. They said, yes, global warming is real, and we can show it to you in the numbers, which I'm about to. But on top of that, there are other events that happen because of climate change you should be aware of: extreme droughts, extreme hurricanes and storms. But again, Donald Trump has never bothered to investigate any of this. He has no intellectual curiosity, besides which he's fundamentally corrupt. And as long as he's being funded by the fossil fuel industry, he's perfectly happy to ignore facts. But here, our job is to give you facts, so let's do it. As for things getting too cold all over the place, there hasn't been a cooler than average year since 1976. According to more than 135 years of temperature records kept by NASA and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Now, I know there's some lunatics who think, you can't trust NASA, they're a bunch of scientists. And they are part of a Chinese hoax, even though they're NASA. Well, that doesn't really matter. The temperatures are clear. Everybody knows the temperatures. You could ask any scientist you like what the temperatures were for all those years. And it continues to get hotter and hotter and hotter. That's a fact. There's no disputing that fact. You can claim, no, it's just a coincidence and it's not man-made. It just happens to be happening. First of all, then you should do something about it anyway and give us your alternative hypothesis as to why it's happening. Instead, it could be warming, it could be cooling, there's cold all over the place. Last year was Earth's second hottest on record. The world's oceans were the hottest ever recorded in 2017. Does not look like that is cold all over the place. I've got more facts. The last 4 years have been the globe's 4 hottest on record, according to NOAA. That is, again, our government, not the Chinese government saying that. That's our scientists. And by the way, all of the world's scientists. So there's no dispute that there is, in fact, global warming on a macro scale. And obviously, Trump has no idea what the difference between the weather and climate is. So as soon as he sees snow, he's like, I knew it. I knew there was no global warming.
I'm like a smart person.
No, you're actually one of the dumbest people that has ever been in public office or in the public sphere, period. I mean, are you positive that other reality show stars, and that's what he is, were dumber than him? I mean, I would argue that he was among the dumbest reality show stars we had, let alone people in office. But, that's him on the ice caps. And I got one last quote for you on the idea of the environment overall. He says, he does believe in, quote, clean air. I believe in crystal clear, beautiful water. I believe in just having good cleanliness in all. Oh, Jesus Christ. This is not about whether you keep your room clear. Okay, so I like to wash my hands. I like cleanliness. I like big, beautiful water, like the one that surrounds Puerto Rico. Okay, but it is true that he does like things that are clean, including clean coal, because he said this once.
We've ended the war on beautiful, clean coal, and it's just been announced that a second brand new coal mine where they're going to take out clean coal, meaning they're taking out coal, they're going to clean it, is opening.
I'm like a smart person.
They're going to take out the coal and then clean it. That's what he thinks clean coal is.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFDR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
One of the dumbest guys in America. And if you voted for him and you see all this evidence and you're still proud, well, apparently he's got competition. We'll be right back. Thanks for listening to this podcast. You're only halfway through, so hold, stay right here. Just want to remind you, if you want to get all 5 segments of the Young Turks commercial free, these are just 2 of them. Every day we do it. So go to tytnetwork.com/join and you get the whole 5 segments, 2 hours, ad free. Do it now. And that's some easy listening right there. Okay, members of the day, Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you. Members of the day are Sean Welling and Deb Bauman. Members make this show possible. tytnetwork.com/join. You get all the shows, by the way, including this one. That's 2 hours. Dan Rather's, which is a weekly show, old school, aggressive progressives. All without commercials, tytnetwork.com/join, including the post game today, where I will talk about how I almost got into a fight with a Trump supporter over the weekend.
Jeez.
The disastrous. Okay, I am Sock writes it on Twitter. They finally did it. They got tired of winning. Yes, I am Sock. That's the kind of pun I'm talking about. Okay, I almost went with the graphic not winning, but they talked me out of it. Anyway, you know what I am, Sock? For a pun after my own heart, T-shirt. Pick any T-shirt from shoptyt.com, and we'll get that to you guys, or to you. All right, what's next, Anna?
All right. There's been a number of murders over the last year that have raised concerns about an organization, a neo-Nazi group that is growing in the United States. Now, currently, what we know about this group is that it's small. There are dozens of individuals who have joined in, and they are not only neo-Nazis, but also very much anti-government. And they plan on overthrowing the government and doing so in a violent way. Now, we know this because it's in their manifesto. It's online. It's something that they openly preach about time and time again, and it seems as though no one's really onto them or doing anything about it. Now, the recent story that drew attention to this neo-Nazi group involved a 19-year-old student in Orange County, California, that was found stabbed to death. And his name was Blaze Bernstein, and the suspect who's been arrested in connection to his murder is a man by the name of Sam Woodward. Now, Sam Woodward, who you can see there, is a member of this neo-Nazi group, and I'm going to tell you a little more about them right now. The name is Atomwaffen. Atomwaffen Division, a relatively new Charles Manson-obsessed neo-Nazi outfit that defines itself as a revolutionary national socialist organization centered around political activism and the practice of an autonomous fascist lifestyle. Now, what you saw there was in quotes because that is what they state themselves about their own group. They have the ultimate aim of overthrowing the U.S. government through the use of terrorism and guerrilla warfare. Now, Woodward, the man who has been arrested in connection to the murder of Blaze Bernstein, joined the hate group back in 2016, and attended a 3-day training camp with other members in Texas.
During 2016, I wonder why. Can't quite tell why people were encouraged to do that at that time. All right, what else happened?
So during that training, they openly talk about the need for a violent overthrow of the government, their hatred for minority groups and anyone who isn't a white male is very open and apparent. And they also talk about how they're against so-called keyboard warriors. They don't want people to, do activism from the comfort of their own homes behind a computer screen. They want people to take physical action. So there was the death of Blaze Bernstein, and then there's also something interesting that we talked about a couple months ago, the murder of these two parents in Virginia, Reston, Virginia. So the Atomwaffen connection has also been reported in the bizarre murder of Scott Fricker and Buckley Kuhn Fricker in their Reston, Virginia home in December. That story involved a teenage girl who was involved with a man who was also part of this group. And apparently once the parents realized that he was this neo-Nazi, they advised their daughter to stop seeing him. He retaliated by showing up to their home and literally murdering them.
So the camp that they went to, they themselves called a Doomsday Hate Camp, and they took a picture there wearing skull masks and doing Nazi salutes. The quote that Anna read you about guerrilla warfare and terrorism is their own quote.
Yes.
So they say we are terrorists and we are looking to overthrow the American government. Now, Anna's right. It's not a huge group. Best that people can tell, groups like the Anti-Defamation League are tracking them. They have about 80 members, okay? But with those 80 members, they've already done significant damage. By the way, the Atomwaffen in German means atomic weapon. And so there's the Blaise Bernstein murder. And let me just pause there for a second. So they hate blacks and Latinos and Muslims. You're not surprised by that. But until you get into this extreme right-wing neo-Nazi movement, you don't realize how much they hate the Jews. And that comes up over and over again. Watch my interview with David Duke on TYT Interviews. I was surprised. I thought he was going to talk about blacks and people crossing the border and all this stuff. No, obsessed with Jewish Americans, obsessed. So Blaise Bernstein happens to be Jewish. He's killed in a hate crime. And so it always comes back to that. So there was the Frickers who were murdered, another guy in this small little group, but that's two sets of murders, 3 people killed, according to investigators so far. That is what they believe happened. And then there's this interesting case of in Tampa, Devin Arthurs, who killed 2 of his roommates, Jeremy Himmelman and Andrew Wunschuk. And there was a 4th roommate, Brandon Russell. Turns out they were all part of Atomwaffen. Now, in this crazy twist to the story, there's another story we had reported on. It turns out that Arthurs flipped on the roommates. Now, look, in order to be in this group, you have to be damaged in some way. I mean, your life's got to be going so miserable. You got to blame it on the Jews, the Muslims, the blacks, the Latinos. I mean, I know that a lot of things are blamed on Muslims and Latinos, particularly these days in mass. But for those folks, a lot of things are going wrong in their life, right? Yeah. That they need a scapegoat. So, but in order to be in this division where you're saying you're a terrorist neo-Nazi, there's got to be something particularly wrong. So Devin Arthurs then flips and decides that he's going to go in a different direction and he's going to become an extreme Muslim. What? And he murders his fellow neo-Nazis, but they don't get Brandon Russell, who's the 4th roommate. And Devin Arthurs tells a story about how they were going to blow up a nuclear power plant. And the authorities are like, I don't know about that. And it turns out Brandon Russell had an explosive device.
That's right.
And so there was a real plot. These are hardcore terrorists. There's all these killings all across the country in different places in the country, plus the plot to blow up a nuclear power plant. So this is incredibly dangerous. Now, let us pause for a second. Imagine we knew of a group that had publicly declared that they were Muslim radicals, that there were 80 of them, and they said they were terrorists, and they were looking to overthrow the American government, and had done these murders throughout the country. Now, how do you think it would get covered in the media?
No, but I mean, not only covered in the media, but talked about by our elected officials. And that's the thing that concerns me the most, because while I think that it's completely fine to track extremists of all backgrounds, I don't care if you're Muslim, I don't care if you're Christian, I don't care. If you are planning any type of plot that harms people, that murders people, that hurts anyone, then the government should be tracking you, should be investigating you, should be doing anything and everything to prevent it. But in this case, it seems as though this is an organization that is openly talking about causing serious harm to people. And what's happening? I mean, why are they able to carry out these murders without people investigating them and preventing that? What is the whole point of the NSA? Why are they spying on every single American indiscriminately? right? Why? It's because of national security. We want to keep people safe. You have this group of people openly talking about how they want to cause harm to others, how they want to violently overthrow the government. Is anyone watching them? Is anyone tracking them? Is anyone keeping an eye on what's going on? That's what I want to know. The media is corrupt. The media is doing a crappy job in covering this. Good on the Washington Post for covering this story in their paper. But overall, I'm not really seeing much attention drawn to this.
Are you kidding me? You know cable news would go apoplectic over this. Oh my God, we found a cell of 80 declared terrorist Muslims in the country, and they've already committed all of these murders in different parts of the country. Oh my God, the terrorists are here and they're looking to overthrow the government. Well, and it would be over and over and over and over again. Oh, neo-Nazis, it's not a big deal. They're just murdering random Jews and parents and et cetera, and planning to blow things up. No big deal. They're all from Atomwaffen. So okay, and then Trump says we got to ban Muslims until we figure out what the hell is going on. That's what he said during the campaign. Then he does a Muslim ban, finds out that's illegal, and then he goes, yeah, I meant a travel ban, right? So banning all Muslims. In this case, you don't have to ban all right-wingers. You don't have to investigate all right-wingers, and we would never agree to that, right? But here is a specific group of neo-Nazis who say we would like to do terrorism, and they have already 3 of their members, 2 members and 1, I guess, former member, right, has already killed all these people. And but there's no investigation until we figure out what the hell is going on. And I hope the FBI, which from time to time does a good job of tracking down plots, sometimes they unfoil Muslim terrorist plots, which they stop at a greater rate, but that's good. I'm thrilled that they're stopping those plots. Right-wing plots, right-wing extremist plots, which they block at a lower percentage, but still, from time to time, they'll catch like the guys who were planning to blow up the apartment building where Somalis were living in, I think it was Kansas. So some good work there. But this would appear to be something that we should all be concerned about and should be the target of an actual investigation based on credible evidence rather than, I don't like this group of people, so let's demagogue over it.
Yeah. All right, moving on to some other news.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your active ID more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
Recently, CNN in Atlanta was dealing with some significant death threats that were lodged at them by a 19-year-old by the name of Brandon Griesmer. Now, he had called CNN on 22 different occasions, and during those phone calls, he made threats that included, I'm coming to gun you all down, and also, I'm smarter than you, more powerful than you, I have more guns than you, more manpower, your caste is about to get gunned down in a matter of hours. Now, CNN took those threats seriously. They immediately took action to protect its employees and make sure that everyone will be okay. But Breitbart took this story and framed it in a way that I thought was fascinating. Now, what you're about to listen to is Alex Marlow, who is the host of the radio program that Breitbart does on Patriot Radio. He's speaking to John Nolte, who's the editor-at-large at Breitbart. And here's what they had to say about the threats that CNN had to deal with. Take a listen.
But you're rightly pointing out that pushing fake news lies, as CNN does, where you push that the president is a racist and should be removed from office by the 25th Amendment because he's crazy, this is going to create a tension within the country that is going to, if not lead towards violence, it is going to at least push it in that direction. And it's a very cautionary and thoughtful piece, and yet CNN was fully triggered online, exploded over it, and I want to know if you have any thoughts on it a few days later.
You have in CNN a network that has been spreading hate, lies, fake news, openly fomenting riots for years now, ever since Jeff Zucker took over the network. And you have this 19-year-old guy in Michigan. According to authorities, he was so angry over CNN's fake news that he called them with these inexcusable death threats and threatened to go to their Atlantic headquarters and kill everyone. I don't think there's any question that the guy is unbalanced.
So let me give you some more from Nolte. He continued to say CNN is a network that is in hyperdrive to legitimize political violence. CNN wants political violence. They want people hurt. They want riots. They want Antifa out there. They see political violence as a legitimate tool to further CNN's far left agenda. So that is their take on death threats aimed at CNN, that it's CNN's fault, that they are provoking political violence. You know, for the longest time, I couldn't figure out why it was that they kept making it seem as though CNN pushes for fake news or political violence, all this BS that they keep, spewing. Why is it they keep going after CNN? CNN is the one cable news channel that goes out of its way to pretend like it doesn't have any bias, right? It doesn't have any political leanings. They're completely neutral all the time. They don't want to pick sides. I mean, yes, they have some of the hosts that do some commentary that, will call Trump out. But overall, they always make it seem as though both sides are equal. I mean, MSNBC doesn't do that. MSNBC comes at it from a very anti-Trump perspective, but they don't attack Trump. I mean, they don't attack MSNBC as much. And I realize what it is. They know that CNN is obsessed with appearing neutral, and that they won't fight back as aggressively as some other cable news channel will. But by the way, who pushes for political violence more than anyone? Wouldn't it be the president who's consistently saying, fake news, oh, they're doing all this bad stuff to the American people, they're misinforming you? Would it be that guy? Would it be the guy that tweeted this last year? Take a look at this video.
Oh my God, what's going to happen?
No, but it's CNN. It's CNN that's provoking political violence. I'm so tired of the right wing deciding what the narrative is, successfully framing things and twisting things to their advantage, lying to people about what's really going on. The reality is the conservatives right now, people like the talking heads at Breitbart that you just heard from, they're the ones pushing for political violence. Our president, he's pushing for political violence. They're the ones who support it, who push for it, who frame things in these ways. How are you going to blame CNN for a 19-year-old directing death threats toward them? Like, how sick is that?
No, well, that's exactly the point. What they're trying to do is tell their audience, CNN has it coming.
It's disgusting.
The guy who threatened to kill everybody at CNN, well, that was CNN's fault.
No.
If CNN hadn't done the fake news, well, then they wouldn't have to get murdered. But I guess since they're doing it, they're asking for it. That is clearly what John Nolte and Alex Marlow are driving at here. I mean, look, there's a lot of different ways to look at this, but to me, one of the most frustrating parts is the rest of the media taking Breitbart or any of these alt-right lunatics seriously. Oh, that's a source. Oh, that's legitimate. Oh, they reported on this, as if they have an interest in the truth. Look at these lunatics that think that CNN is fomenting violence. What? On which planet? Look, I have my issues with CNN. Ironically, it's the opposite. It's that, not that they're not promoting violence, I don't want them to do that under any circumstance, that they're the establishment. They have an establishment bias. And you know what an establishment bias is? Protect the status quo. Now, the last thing the status quo wants is any violence in the streets. They're already part of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They don't want anybody to rock the boat. It's their boat. So, and everyone on the CNN is plain Jane vanilla. And they take these guys and pretend that they're the ones pushing for riots in the streets. You have to be a lunatic to believe that. And the rest of the press takes these lunatics seriously?
Yeah, it was CNN that pushed for the protests in Charlottesville, Virginia. Right? It was CNN that persuaded someone to run over a counter-protester and essentially take her life. It was CNN that did that. Or was it Breitbart? And right-wing, non-news organizations like that essentially foster this type of disgusting environment. And by the way, look, politics aside, we're playing with people's lives right now. They're playing with people's lives, and they have absolutely no qualms about it.
And by the way, why drop Jeff Zucker's name in the middle of all that? There's no evidence that CNN changed their so-called fomenting of violence. What it is, again, I can't describe to you how insane that is. And to link that to Jeff Zucker. And then they protest like, oh, how dare they link us to the neo-Nazis? Well, we know that Milo asked neo-Nazis for their opinion on what the alt-right should be, and then you guys at Breitbart published it. We already know that. And then you drop Jeff Zucker's name in the middle of a rant about how they have it coming. Gee, I wonder where you're going with that. Okay, so that if you're not aware and you're not a alt-right freak, you're totally confused. I don't know why. Why Jeff Zucker? Jeff Zucker happens to be Jewish. It's a whistle dog to their followers. Oh, it's the elite that are doing it again. Remember when Alex Jones was ranting about Brian Stelter and how he's a spawn of Satan and how they drink the kids' blood and they run all the banks. Why does CNN run the banks? It's obvious anti-Semitism put in there to foment people. And then he says at one point, quote, obviously, John Nolte does, obviously he was provoked by CNN's fake news. In other words, if you don't like CNN's fake news, just like we've been telling you not to like it, I guess you'd be provoked too into trying to kill all of them.
And also think about how this is a form of intimidation, right? It's a form of intimidation. If you ever have the audacity to criticize Trump, well then immediately you will be labeled as fake news. And we're going to go ahead and constantly perpetuate this like ridiculous narrative that you're fake news to the point where people get all up in arms and then direct death threats to you, direct violence toward you. And then if anyone carries out any type of threat or violence, it's your fault. It's your fault for having the audacity to speak out against our dear leader. That's what this is. It's creating an environment of intimidation so people don't actually speak the truth about Donald Trump, so they don't actually criticize him for his ridiculous failed policies. It's disgusting.
Look, it's one thing for right-wingers to say that CNN has a liberal bias, and that's perfectly fine. Agree, disagree. And CNN, I'm sure, wholly disagrees with my assessment that they have an establishment bias. Those are conversations to be had in a political sphere. When you start doing exactly as Anna pointed out, intimidation, winking at violence, and this is the beginning of fascist propaganda. You cannot legitimize it. Because once you take the Breitbarts of the world and any of those alt-right online so-called news publications, they're not news, they're propaganda, and they're hateful and oftentimes dangerous propaganda. If you legitimize them, you have done them a great favor and a great disservice to journalism. They're not journalists, they're nowhere near it. All they want to do is stoke up their side for dangerous propaganda.
Well, CNN had an interview recently with Jay-Z, and that sparked a tiff with Donald Trump. So let's get to that story. Recently, Van Jones spoke to Jay-Z on CNN, and during their conversation, they talked about the current political climate and Donald Trump's claims in regard to increasing employment for Black Americans. Take a look.
We have a president that comes and says he is somebody who's now saying, look, I'm
all right, let's go back and play that video again, please.
He is somebody who's now saying, look, I'm growing, I'm dropping Black unemployment. Black people are doing well under my administration. Does he have a point that maybe the Democrats have been giving us good lip service but no jobs? Maybe he's going to say terrible things but put money in our pocket. Does that make him a good leader?
No, because it's not about money at the end of the day. Money doesn't equate to like happiness. It doesn't. That's not missing the whole point. We treat people like human beings, and then that's the main point. You can't treat someone like It goes back to the whole thing. You're going to treat me really bad and pay me well.
So Jay-Z also talked about the current racial tensions in the country that he feels are fostered by Donald Trump and his rhetoric toward minorities. And Donald Trump did not like that conversation. He got triggered fairly quickly and immediately took to Twitter, as he does, and said the following: "Somebody please inform Jay-Z that because of my policies, black unemployment," I don't know why unemployment is capitalized, "has just been reported to be at the lowest rate ever recorded." He continued to say African American unemployment is the lowest ever recorded in our country. The Hispanic unemployment rate dropped a full point in the last year and is close to the lowest in recorded history. Dems did nothing for you but get your vote. Hashtag never forget. And I love that he included Fox and Friends in the tweet. Now, the reality is that unemployment for black Americans had already been decreasing significantly, especially during the last term in Obama's administration. So let me give you the numbers on that. African American unemployment had fallen precipitously during President Barack Obama's second term from 13.7% to 7.8%, a drop that has actually continued during Trump's first year in office. So if you take a quick look at this graph, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. There was a rather steep decline in the unemployment rate for black Americans during Obama's term, and then it just continued dropping after Trump got elected.
So put that back up for a second, that graph. And let me read you the last sentence in the second tweet that Anna read for you. He said, Dems did nothing for you but get your vote, referring to African Americans. Does that does that graph, go back to the graph, does that graph look like they did nothing for you as that unemployment plummeted, African American unemployment plummeted under Obama? And he said, hashtag never forget. Okay, well then look at that chart and don't forget it, because it got cut nearly in half under Obama, and obviously the trend continues now. It's not like Trump did anything different. The graph does not go in a different direction, it goes in the same direction.
Right, and I want to be clear about where the source is for those numbers. It's the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So that is government data that is readily available to anyone who wishes to take a look at it.
And he said to Jay-Z that it's because of my policies that these have gone down. What policies? What policies in regards to African Americans? So Jay-Z, look, he's not a political expert. He should not have conceded that people are doing better at all because of Trump and say, well, you still have to be decent. No, it's not his policies at all. If anything, you can tell from the chart, it's Obama's policies. I actually think the problem there is, yes, that's unemployment, but wages are not in good shape. Mm-hmm. So I would blame Obama and Trump for that. But once again, Donald Trump triggered and attacking an African-American celebrity. Eminem, also a rapper, said similar things, did not get attacked. Curious.
Yeah.
All right, Rebel Headquarters is next with opponent for Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching what I hope was a lovely edition of the Young Turks. Now, you know that is 2 of the 5 segments that we do because that's free. We want to have you support independent media and come watch the whole show that we do every day. That's 5 segments overall, no ads at all. That's at tytnetwork.com/join. Come become a member. Thanks for watching either way. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.